Okay, now you guys are on time, so we are getting straight into it. I want to make this workshop as practical as possible because I know everyone is busy. You could be anywhere else, but you chose to come here to learn what it takes to build your influence and also monetize your personal brand. So I invite you to work with me in the workbooks that I just put through the chat. But also, if you want to grab a piece of paper, can be literally that simple to develop your own personal brand strategy from the beginning to the end, that you can walk away with something tangible and you can actually put it in practice. So we're not just talking about hypothetically what you could do, but I really want you to invite to think about how would it apply to me? What kind of lessons can I learn from other case studies? Because often we don't know what we don't know. So being exposed to a different way of thinking and approaching a situation hopefully will spark some ideas in you. Now, I always want to know what's in it for me. What am I up for? Now, we are going to go through 3 big parts in this workshop. As I said, I want to make it as practical as possible. So if you've got questions, comments, ideas, insights, put it in the chat. There is also some time for Q&A at the end. No question is a dumb question. So I really want to encourage you to ask away. This is now your chance, and we are a small group, so really it's your time. So we are getting started with why standing out is not optional anymore. And then also what we can actually do to stand out, also without having to be loud. You will see, and a couple of you know me already, I'm the biggest introvert. Like I could stare against the wall for 6 months and not talk to anyone, and I would be perfectly happy. But we are not using that as an excuse. There are ways how to manage that. And I'll also talk about that, especially as a business owners, we need to manage our energy. And then last but not least, I want to also take it a step further. What does it take to not only build and monetize a personal brand, because that's, I would say, the foundation, but what does it take to actually become the trusted authority? There is this next level. But often it's too overwhelming and people are like, well, I don't want to speak at those big stages, or I don't want to pitch myself to big podcasts or whatever it might be. And you don't have to start there. So again, don't let the big, very daunting goal or end result prevent you from taking steps right now. Now, if you guys are in business, you know what it currently feels like. It's freaking busy, it's noisy, it's crowded, and it's very competitive. And the fact is that COVID-19 has fast-tracked everything. It has changed the way we behave because technology has changed the game. It has changed the game, how we live, how we work, how we act, and how we interact. And if you thought it was busy pre-COVID, it's now another level because we live in a digital first world. And just to give you some context to it, and some numbers to support it, there are 4.48 billion active social media users. That's a lot. And social media platforms come and go. And there are people who are literally posting 8 times a day and they don't even get traction. There are 3.5 billion Google searches, which is a lot. But it also shows that we can't just put more noise in this world. We need to stand out for some of the right reasons. And the question is, when you Google yourself, what comes up? Because nowadays, most first interactions happen way before we actually meet. And there are many, many research studies that show us that 87% of decisions are made way before we actually make the decision. It's based on research. It's based on word of mouth. It's based on social proof, meaning what are your reviews? What are your ratings? What do other people say about you? And unfortunately, or fortunately, we make up our mind quickly. In the second we come across a LinkedIn profile, we come across a website, we see somebody in person, like even our workshop today, you have made up your mind about me very quickly from the get-go. This is how our brains are wired. And nowadays, when it is so busy, when it is loud, simply having more degrees and more years of experience, that doesn't cut it anymore. Like most of us have been around the block for a little while. And even my parents always said, just go to university, get your degree, and you are set for life, because the ones who've got the degrees are the elite ones and you will always have a job. Well, that was maybe the case back in the day. When I started university, only 2% of Austrians, so I'm from Austria, went to university. Nowadays, everyone under the sun and their dog has kind of a university degree or any kind of qualifications. So simply having more of that doesn't cut it anymore. Because also thanks to technology, we are now in a global economy, and we're not just competing with somebody next door or from the next suburb or even from the same state. We are competing with a global workforce. And like it or not, there will always be somebody who is more qualified than us, who is wittier than us, who is more experienced than us, and highly likely also cheaper than us, especially in countries where the minimum wage is a lot cheaper. We cannot compete with that. And I also don't recommend to enter the race to the bottom, because we cannot win that. So what can we do when being better simply isn't good enough anymore? It comes down to being different. The only way how we can actually own our space is to own our story, to own our personality, and bring our personal approach to whatever we are doing. So it's not the important part what we actually do, it's how we do it. And people buy into people's competence, but they buy even more so into their confidence and into their energy, into their personality. And I've experienced it, unfortunately or fortunately, firsthand. When I went to university, I thought brand and product marketing in the fast-moving consumer goods industry, my one and only career. And it was for the first 10 years of my professional life that I progressed in my career very quickly. I'm from a very entrepreneurial family. I would say old-fashioned entrepreneurial. You work hard, you put your head down, and you earn depending on that. If you don't work hard, you don't earn a lot of money. So at the beginning of my career, I could outwork everyone because that was ingrained in me. And I was promoted, and I always say probably too quickly for my own good, because my mindset didn't grow up with me. And it was a Friday morning, and my manager called me into the office, and I was in a very senior role before the age of 30. And I thought, ooh, it must be time for my next promotion, because that's how it always happened until this stage. And she said, let's go for lunch. I was like, oh, that must be something good. Well, it wasn't the case. It was the opposite. She put me on a performance improvement plan. I was like, excuse me? Like the one who is in the first and out the last, the one who is taking all the projects and responsibilities on board. I'm the one who is getting performance improved, and not the others. What's wrong here? And she said, yes, we do see that you do a lot. And that's great. However, your role is to influence. You know, at that stage, I managed 18 boards across Australia and New Zealand. Your role is not to do the doing, but it's to enable others doing the doing. And I didn't have a mentor or anyone who could actually give me the external perspective. And this was the first time that I realized that my perception about myself and how I show up is very different to the external perception. And this situation, honestly, bruised me, not a little, but a lot. That much so that I got out of the industry completely and I got into recruitment. Long story short, it was because of a friend said, I think you would be really good with this. I was like, I don't have plan B, I'll try anything. And every recruitment agency in Brisbane rejected me because they said, well, we like you, but you don't have sales experience and we don't think we can teach you either, because my resume didn't say sales. Even though as a marketer, you still need to constantly pitch ideas. So that was already a reason or a lesson learned that I thought, with my 18th interview, after every other agency rejected me, this time I'm starting differently. And I literally said, I know I don't have the traditional recruitment background and you think I don't have the right sales experience. However, so all of a sudden I connected the dots and I did get the job. And she said, you know what? We see something in you, but you need to start something new. And that's digital and technology. Apparently it's a thing. That was 8 years ago, so very early stage. And because I was progressing in my marketing career so quickly, I was actually never hands-on with digital marketing or social media. I had teams doing it. And now I had to look after digital and technology recruitment and I couldn't speak their language. Like I didn't know what they were actually doing. So I Googled, what does SEO mean? Like that was the level of knowledge that I had. And because of that, I had to question my candidates so thoroughly that I understood what they were actually doing. So I could be the translator to my clients who usually didn't have the technical background either. And I could connect the dots as to why their background would be so beneficial to what they were looking for in their business context. And then over the next, not even 3 years, I placed over 300 candidates into roles, even though I didn't have a network. But I just interviewed so many candidates and I built my personal brand that I could attract candidates to me and clients to me, that I progressed in my recruitment career much faster than in my marketing career. And the one thing that I also realized interviewing, hundreds and then thousands of candidates, was the one thing: incredibly talented, smart professionals couldn't land the promotion, couldn't get to this next level, because they couldn't sell themselves. They couldn't make sense out of it. Everyone competed with the 15 years experience here and the 2 degrees there and the award there. And that's nice, but we know we make decisions based on emotions, and then we justify it with logic. And nowadays, when everyone's got a similar background, similar years of experience and expertise, that's not enough. So what I thought was, if there's a method, a process, a system, how I can help my candidates initially to clarify what their competitive advantage is, then they can communicate it and then they can commercialize it in one way or the other. It might be to get into the C-suite. It might be to set up their own business. It might be to land a board role or a speaking engagement. It always goes and follows the same plan. So this is what I've been doing since 2017. I've been doing it full time, because as a recruiter, you can only place so many candidates into a role. And since then, I've had the incredible pleasure and honor to work with some of the largest companies to also help their leaders to build their personal brand, to enhance their business brand, because we know that a personal brand is a lot stronger than a business brand. We don't buy a logo, we buy the person behind it. And also often candidates thought their strong company brand will be their insurance, but it often isn't the case. When they're wanting to go out on their own and they haven't built their own network, their own presence and profile, nobody's interested in them anymore. So how can you build the roof before it rains? And the rain could be in form of a redundancy, and we've seen that a lot over the last couple of years with COVID, or being stood down, or simply being not interested in your industry anymore and you want to do something different. 2020 was a big year in many, many ways. Obviously, COVID hit, but for me, it was also a really incredible year that I got into the Forbes Coaching Council. And that has changed a lot. And last year, I launched my first book. It's actually quite a Bible. It's 378 pages. It's quite a bit, but more than happy to send anyone who wants to copy one, or give you one of the copies at their conference, if anyone is interested. It's quite a milestone, but it goes to show that wherever you start, you don't have to stop there. Like, I started in a completely different direction, but what it is how can you connect the dots? How can you connect worlds that are unique to you and that add value to the audience? And this is exactly what personal branding is all about. But the question is, and now I want you to be honest, when you think of the term personal branding, and I always love to ask this question, what comes to mind? So please feel free to put it in the chat, just to get our idea started and to make sure everyone is awake here. We've got a few people coming. So what do we understand under personal brand? What's everyone's definition? I want to see the good, the bad, and the ugly, because there's usually a good range there. Candid photos. Anything else? Personal branding. What else do we think about personal branding? I want to kick us off. Maybe something like that. Those candid photos. I have to be an influencer. I have to take photos of my lunches and where I'm going. What are you known for? Yes. What you stand for? Absolutely. Super hyped, over the top messages. Something like that. I can sell you everything. Like this lazy salesperson, it's all about you and we're too full of ourselves. Or, in the bad way, not the cup is full, but everything is just about me and so forth. But the truth is, it's not about that. It's literally the difference between being on the bottom of the barrel and having to compete on price, or being chosen and can even charge a premium for it. I would say it's your best marketing tool that you've got, because your personal story, nobody can compete with that. It's unique to you. It's your reputation. And it's also what sets you apart from everyone else. Because as we know already, we buy on emotions and we buy into something that we strongly believe in, that we associate ourselves with. Every decision that we make in terms of what shoes we wear, what handbags we buy, which network we're building, it says something about us. And think about it. If I say, what would you rather wear, Nike or Puma? And people would say, oh my God, I would never wear Puma. And others would say, Nike, oh gosh, never. It's like, they are shoes. Like both of them get you from A to B. This is the intention of a shoe, but it's what we associate with the brand. What it also helps us is to diversify. If, Nike, like it or not, it has a strong positioning. It has a strong promise. They stand for something. They've got an experience beyond the shoe. When we say Nike is about to open a hotel, what would you think about it? What comes to mind? Nike hotel. How would we feel about it? Like, what would you see a hotel experience that Nike starts?
We'd say it's a shoe company. What are you doing opening a hotel?
That is true. That is true. And yes, everything we do says something about us. Just do it. Yes. It would probably be quite sporty. Like, you wouldn't wear high-end business clothes. There would be probably running tracks everywhere and green shoes bars everywhere. That's what they are standing for. But then when I say Hyatt hotels, they're going to launch a shoe. Like, I'm not sure, is it a business shoe or is it a sports shoe? Because honestly, Hyatt, I don't know what they stand for. It's a hotel like every other hotel. Whereas Nike, like it or not, they stand for something. And this is also what personal branding is all about. Often we try to just be vanilla. We don't want to stand out too much, but this is exactly what makes us a toothpaste. We get the one on special. We don't have an emotional connection if we don't have toothache, and we really need the expensive toothpaste for sensitive teeth. I'm one of those people. Because here's the bad news, that perception is reality. And we've got this halo effect. Like in recruitment, for example, we, in agency land, sometimes got 500 applications a day. It's a lot. The first thing that everyone was doing was going straight onto LinkedIn. If there is a photo missing, or the last update was from 2018, immediately our perception was, oh, their skill set must be outdated too, or they don't know how to use a new technology, so they can't be any good. What has one to do with the other? Nothing. But this is how quickly we make up our mind about somebody, whether we like them or not, whether we trust them or not, whether we engage with them and ask for a phone call or for getting a proposal or not. The good news is that we are very much in control over what we put out there, but it does require commitment to it. And I always say branding is actually the unsexy part. Marketing is the fun stuff. This is where we bring our brand to life. This is where we can work on the fancy colors and the websites and the LinkedIn profiles and the cool photos. But if we haven't done the groundwork, the unsexy part, the digging deeper, then we cannot ever get to this next stage. And even the fanciest campaigns, they won't work because it's not us. So what we want to think of is our personal brand is the missing piece between where we are now and where we want to be. It's about creating a perception that we want to be in control of, that we are proud of. And it doesn't just happen. Like, as I said before, we are doing the nitty and gritty work, the unsexy part that is quite intentional to start with. And it also forces us to ask those tough questions as to what is it actually that I strongly believe in and what I stand for and what I also don't stand for. And something like that is never taught at school. So being confronted with this question is like, I don't know, but we need, and often we really don't know, but we need to start somewhere to ask those questions because our brain is wired to find an answer. So even if I don't have the answer right now, what we are doing is to look at different ways to get to the answer, look at different information that we can get this spark happen, associate with different people who have got a different way of thinking. And this is how we slowly but surely clarify it. Like, we don't wake up one day and say, I know exactly what I stand for, what my message is, and how I can add value to this world. It's not a thing, but it starts there. And when clients say, oh, the marketing campaign didn't work, I would say, well, what didn't work? Why didn't it work? Well, nobody's actually clicked, or nobody has registered, or whatever it might be. It's usually because there's a big disconnect between what people associate with the brand and what the marketing message is all about. So, and this also prevents us from being the sleazy salesperson who is all about us, because we know who is actually the audience and how can I add value to them. And this is one of my favorite slides, because we want to distinguish between the marketing side and the branding side of things. Marketing without branding always flops. Branding without marketing always works, because it is the deep work, the groundwork, understanding why I'm doing what I'm doing. What's the purpose beyond making money in my business? What is the strategy that I implement to go from where I am to where I want to be? What's the experience that I want my clients, my candidates, my staff, my partners, what do I want them to feel when they interact with me? Every single touch point, from seeing me on social media to seeing me in an in-person event, to getting an email from me, a phone call, whatever it might be, because all those touch points build the perception about us. And when we want to be known as very reliable, for example, but then we don't get back with an email within 3 weeks, disconnect. So it's all those small things behind the scenes that actually create the experience, whether we are chosen or not. And it's also the hard questions. Whereas the marketing is then, how do we bring this to life? How do we actually get it out there? What are the tactics that we need to implement? How often do we post on social media? What do we look like? The presence. Everything flows a lot easier once we've done the groundwork. And this is exactly what we are going to do today. So I've got a very comprehensive strategy, because I always say I'm the left brainer. I'm very logical. And if there's no strategy or research or data behind it, I'm out. So it's not just let's see how we feel about it today. There's very much a strategic process, how we can work from establishing a strong brand to then developing a compelling marketing campaign around it. And it works a little bit different compared to a business brand. Because with a business brand, what we would usually start with is, who is the audience? Who do you want to get in front of? What are their pain points? What are their challenges? And this is part of the personal brand strategy also, but we don't start there. We start with, what is it that I can bring to the table? What do I want to be known for? What are my strengths, my weaknesses? Why should people choose me over everyone else? So I want you to do a little quiz, and you don't have to share the results, but I want you to check in to see, where is my personal branding and marketing score right now. It is a mix between marketing and branding. And hopefully it will give you already some ideas what you could do to improve your score. So sometimes I've got people writing like a 5 and then others have got a 50. Because based on that, you know where to focus on. And, especially if you want to rebrand, for example, if you want to create a different perception, we need to over-index in those qualities before we develop a more balanced strategy. So what does it mean? I've worked with they call it emerging leaders at Microsoft, but they are actually heads of. So in Australia, we would, and that was an Austrian team, we would say they're already quite senior. Having said that, we had one senior account director who said, I want to get into the C-suite, and I'm taking on all the big clients already and all the tough projects, and I still can't get to this next level. He was, again, heads down, doing the doing. And then we did a 360, and the C-suite said, oh yeah, Mark is a great person and he's the doer, but he's not enabling others to work on those tough projects. Like, he's not C-suite material. Again, two different worlds because of different perceptions. So often we think we just do the doing and the good work and people will see it. Unfortunately, not the case. It's busy out there. Everyone is busy with their own lives. So what we want to focus on is how can we make sure that others see how I can add value to them without the bragging, but how can I make my value add relevant to others? And this is where a strong marketing campaign comes in. So has everyone got a rough idea where we sit in the bottom third or in top third? There's no right or wrong, but it starts here to know how can we develop now a strategy, because there are three big pillars to build a profitable personal brand. And I'm not talking about an influencer style brand who is known for the lifestyle, because this is not what I'm specialized in. Like, obviously the influencer marketing industry is massive now, and it's great that people can actually make money by showing their lifestyle and the products that they're using and so forth. That's not me though. So if you want to become a lifestyle influencer, I can't help you. I have, contacts who can, but I specialize in how can you monetize your expertise and your knowledge? How can you build a business around that? And it starts with clarifying what are my capabilities to start with? Like, what do I have in terms of experience, education, and results, obviously? And then how do I bring that to life? What's my personal story behind why I'm doing what I'm doing? And the last part, which is really important, is to understand, is there even demand? Like, my strength is, I love tahini. I am obsessed with tahini, random fact. And I'm really good with eating it. However, is there a demand for me tasting tahini that I can make $1 million? Probably not. So, small tests like that is to check in, what I offer, is there demand for it? Do people want to actually buy into it or not? And this is where we're getting now practical. We are working through the 3 stages of clarification, then we can communicate it, and then we can commercialize it. So the question first and foremost is, why do I actually want to build a personal brand? Because every strategy is different based on what I want. Do I want to get onto a board, for example? It's a different strategy to, do I want to get paid for speaking engagements? Or do I want to build an online ecosystem to monetize my knowledge through online courses and digital products? Or do I want to build a service-based business to clients? Like, what is the reason that I actually want to build my personal brand? And again, think about it, what you want. Actually, before we do this, if you've got a piece of paper, I would encourage you to do this. We fold it once, and then we fold it again. So we've got 4 columns because we are going to work on that. So the first is, why do I want to build a brand? And, put a goal on there. I want to increase my fees from 1,000 to 5,000, whatever it might be. And then also thinking, okay, so what does it even mean to me? Is it that I don't have to constantly hustle and reach out to clients to work with me? Or is it to get into the C-suite, or to land bigger clients, or to land bigger speaking engagements? Because if you don't know what the end outcome actually means to you, when things get tough and rough, and they will, we lose the motivation for it. So often we don't remember why we do what we do. So what's the purpose behind it? Why is it so important? Is it to build more freedom in your business? Is it to gain more recognition because you've got really a strong message that you want to get out there? Is it to build an ecosystem for, your kids later on to come in? Whatever that might be. And it's something different for every single person, because those are already the first 2 steps. So what is it that I actually want to get, and why is it important? And then also understanding, where am I right now? What are the gaps? Because often strategy is overcomplicated, and it's a big word, and it shouldn't be. It simply means, where am I right now? What are the gaps, or where do I want to be? And how can I get there? And what are gaps that I need to fill along the way? In this stage, what we also want to think of are the derailers. Like, we've got them. We've all got them. It could be the little voices in our heads to say, who are you to talk about this topic? There are so many others who know so much more than you. or I'm too old, or I'm too young, or I'm too big, or I'm too skinny, whatever it might be. Like we all have our own demons. Knowing those derailers is really important, because the ones who put themselves out there, they have worked through their past. They know how to leverage what they've got to get to where they want to be. Okay, so if we think my goal is whatever that might be, I want to be known for as the go-to in marketing, for business brokerage, for accounting, for you name it. And success for me means at least we've got something to work with. And if you think, well, I'm not quite sure, that's fine. But it is a starting point. Like as we just said before, wherever we are starting, we're not going to finish, but we need to start to get somewhere. Okay, let's get into the nitty and gritty. Have you got any questions so far? Anything that I haven't addressed yet? I know I can talk a lot. So when I'm talking, I'm really talking. So please feel free to unmute yourself or put anything into the chat box if anything is unclear.
Yeah, so I found it really interesting at the start of your talk. You mentioned what is your rating when they're doing the background research, and that most people make their decisions based on that initial research work. And rating is a really interesting word, right? So I'm just wondering, beyond, let's say, the typical social medias, how do you build up a more robust, let's say, digital presence for your personal brand?
Great question. So first and foremost, a digital presence is not necessary the one and only answer for everyone. Like the one channel that I would recommend everyone to focus on is LinkedIn, for a couple of reasons. It impacts your Google results. So when somebody Googles you, and this is usually how we start, then your LinkedIn profile ranks in the first 3 results, simply because it is a trusted source of information for Google. So when we optimize our profile, even without being super active on LinkedIn in terms of posting, we are connected with the right keywords. So it means a proper tagline underneath your photo. Having the same profile photo across all channels is a good way to also increase the recognizability. And then in your About Me section, rather than saying seasoned professional with 15 years experience and 2 degrees, having worked with hundreds of clients, boring. Mm-hmm. Turning it around to say, what is in it for me? Why should I read your profile? I know as a business owner, you have to wear a lot of hats, and accounting is probably not one of those hats that you actually want to wear. However, numbers is the foundation to make strong decisions. And this is what future-proofs your business. And this is where I come in. So creating some context before the solution, that's already a great way. And your LinkedIn profile is your landing page. It's one source of information that people can refer to see you are a real person. To start with, you're credible. There's maybe some social proof in terms of recommendations. So if anyone is worried about social media, optimize your LinkedIn profile, and that's already a tick in the box. But I know you've got more on this.
Yeah. Well, it is really interesting, right? Because it's, the way you described it just then, that you can articulate why people should be having conversations with you as a first up. That would be really powerful to, let's say, save C-suite, these very busy C-suites, to save their time, and in a way honoring the audience that you're speaking to or wanting to have a conversation with. But yeah, I find it really interesting that, because we normally just go to, we've done these degrees and we've done this work, and then if we're a little bit evolved, we might talk about initially what we're passionate about, but it would be nice to kind of articulate why people should be having conversations with you.
Absolutely. And to be honest, I think that LinkedIn, not right now, but probably in the next 2 to 5 years, will become a Fiverr or a freelancer equivalent for professionals. So anyone who knows Fiverr or Upwork.com and so forth, they are connecting freelancers, and usually fairly cheap freelancers, with businesses and demand. I think because of the gig economy and freelance economy that's increasing, LinkedIn is trying already with events that you can monetize, and they've established a LinkedIn wallet. I think it is not the case yet, but you can offer services and people can actually ask for a quote or a proposal from you. I think down the line, we can actually transition through LinkedIn, that, you know, LinkedIn will get a cut of it, because that would be one of their income revenues that they don't have yet, but that would increase their value, that they get like 10 or 5 or 20% or whatever of the transaction volume. So simply,
Petra, I think too, just following that, the drive for remote work, I can't imagine won't just make effectively, if it continues the way that it is, everyone will be a gig worker. There won't be the concept of a company per se, other than a loosely, a very short-term created structure that brings a bunch of individuals together to do a particular job, you know, with a hard start and end date, or, you know, goal, and then they'll disperse and go and do something else. I think it's a absolutely transformative thing. I don't necessarily agree that it's a good thing, but I can imagine that that's where it might end up.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you made a good point. We don't personally have to agree with it or not, but we can't ignore trends. And to be honest, Australia hasn't seen the big and the great resignation, what everyone is talking about, as much as the US or Asia even has seen it. Having said that, it doesn't mean it doesn't happen eventually. Like, we might be a couple of years behind, but COVID-19, what if it has taught us one thing, is that nothing is safe. Like, who would have thought that a big industry like traveling is not a thing anymore from one day to the other? Like, unheard of. And really smart professionals were stood down or made redundant, not because they did something wrong, but because the market has changed. And even with skill sets, they are coming and going because technology is also replacing a lot of them. So simply putting all our eggs in one basket and having this one source of income is the riskiest option that we can have. And which is why, you know, I'm a big fan of a portfolio career and having different and diverse income streams. Because also when COVID-19 hit, I had 6 income streams and 2 of them broke away. I did feel sorry for myself, like a lot. Let's be honest about this. But the next day I just thought, you know what, I'll just build up the other ones. And now I've got 9 income streams. So often your mess can be your message. So how else can you be more resourceful? And as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, we always have to be resourceful. And it doesn't mean that I have to offer, and it shouldn't actually be the case, to offer 6 or 9 or 15 different things. I'm a dog walker by day and then I'm a bartender at night. This is not scalable. This is where we burn out. But how can we use our intellectual property and monetize it in different ways, in different deliveries? And when we talk about commercialization, I actually share some of the ideas how we can use what we've got already and package it in different ways to get in front of different audiences and build those different income streams so that we are a lot more future-proof.
Well, that LinkedIn that you described, the one where it's not just let's find out who this person is, and let's also engage them and then put them into a team and then get the job done, and then house all the information regarding that particular project in this one little kind of place inside of LinkedIn. That's the kind of platform that I would definitely double down on and want to kind of increase. So what you're saying is it's probably better to prepare now for some of these emerging trends and ways, things are kind of looking digitally, especially with LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And, it's a fairly new feature and you need to have set up the creator profile. So it's just a tweak on your LinkedIn profile, but I get probably 4 requests a month. If you think it's not much, it isn't, but it's another source of people could inquire about us. I got, 3 big speaking engagements through that over the last 6 months. I got one big one coaching client through it. So it still adds up because people get in touch, not just to, browse around like Instagram. You just spend time on Instagram to waste time when you wait for a coffee, want to be entertained. You're not necessarily looking for a solution where you actually want to purchase something. Whereas LinkedIn is very much an information hub, a professional network that goes beyond just wanting entertainment. People coming there for a purpose. It's similar to Google. It's a search engine. So we go there with an intent. Small account or small business accountants Brisbane, we would come up, and then we can get the proposal or the request. So it's just, and we don't have to do much other than optimizing our profile with it. And I'm all for working smarter rather than harder. So if this one tweak can actually change something to our lead generation and for us to increase reach and people can actually connect with us, then why not? We leverage it.
Yeah, and going back to your building a tahini tasting $1 million personal brand,
I'm in for it.
which I think would be a great exercise for all of us to get involved in as a prac, because it's got a nice ring to it as well, tahini tasting. But there was an event that I curated, and the gentleman was let's say a prolific international project manager, but he had come to a certain point in his career, let's say his age as well, where he was finding it difficult to re-engage back into work. And it used to be hard to re-engage after 60, then it became hard to re-engage after 50. Now it's even after 40, it's hard to, in some a lot of cases after 40, it's hard to re-engage. But one of the things that came out in that event, and he's speaking and the people that were asking questions, is that he makes cheese at home. And people just were so fascinated about his cheese making stories. And I said to him, hey, you should do your own version of, Who Moved My Cheese, but for people trying to re-engage back into to work. And off the back of that, he got an inquiry and became the senior IT, the most senior IT infrastructure person for the Sunshine Coast University. So he was re-engaged back into work through this very interesting part of his, let's say, his persona and his personality and personal interests that don't seem to have any relevance. But at the end of the day, we're humans and we find people interesting for whatever reason. And it may be that your tahini tasting does engage an audience and creates
a GoFundMe page.
I'm sure that, we can come up with a year's worth of content, almost overnight. There's so many different brands of tahini that we can explore. But yeah, I just find it really interesting that sometimes the thing that we don't see as interesting, like he never thought his cheese making was an interesting thing, but the whole event turned into this really interesting person that makes cheese, and people were fascinated by it. Maybe the thing that you don't find interesting about yourself, others would and could and should.
Absolutely. And, this actually leads us perfectly into this part, because as a business owner, we only have so much time and even less energy. So knowing what our strength is, what naturally drives us, what we are excited about, what we could do 24/7, and even without getting paid, and it doesn't drain us. This is the focus that we should hone in on and support ourselves with a team, outsourced resources who can complement our strengths and our weaknesses. Because everyone's got their own way of getting energized and getting drained. And if we are constantly trying to push up the hill, and it always feels hard, eventually we're going to burn out. So I would always argue, especially running a business, has more to do with energy management rather than time management. Like, I'm really bad with admin, really bad. And it takes me probably like 2 hours to pay a bill because I can't find it, and then I don't know my logins. Horrible. It's outsourced. I'm not worrying about that. Somebody else, like one of my VAs, so switched on, takes her probably 3 minutes. But it's also knowing what to, in this little time what I've got per day, what do I focus on? What's the $1,000 task, and what else can I outsource? Or products which are not profitable, but they take a lot of time and energy and resources from where I could actually focus on more. And this is where it all starts, to really going deep and identifying, yes, I've got this degree in accounting, but I hate the compliance side of things. I really love to come up with financial planning and strategies and how to make a business more profitable. Like then it's a different kind of position from being the compliant accountant who does your tax and the BES to somebody who is a financial business partner and grows with the business. Different value proposition straight away. But just saying we are a financial partner doesn't necessarily mean it's the answer when I haven't done the deep work and say, what is it that excites me? Where am I really strong at? What does come so easy to me that I could do it in my sleep? And what are the tasks that, yes, I am really good because I've done it forever in 2 days, but I can't get excited about it. And this is, I was working actually, that's why I say accountant, with an accounting team last week. And both of them, do like a partner, do, and both were like, ugh, like literally drained. And I couldn't, I felt bad just being in front of them and said, well, we do the tax and we do the BES. And I was like, oh, this is boring already. And accountant is not my most interesting topic. But what came out throughout the day, when they got really excited to talk about this bigger picture behind the compliance, they say, yeah, we do it. But what really gets us excited is to see how we can tweak a business to make it more profitable, that they can grow and reinvest. So all of a sudden, it's a completely different value proposition that really excited them. And, I was excited that I would actually change my accountant to them because they got so excited about it. And this also makes this awkward feeling about, I don't want to talk about myself or be too, salesy or slimy. It changes the game because I bring the energy with it. I get people excited about what I'm doing, and people buy into our energy and our confidence more so than our competence. So this is the deep dive. And this is also what is actually our authority positioning. Now, as we said before, it's very busy. So just saying we are an accountant for small businesses, it doesn't cut it anymore. Or I want to be known for digital transformation or for marketing. That's way too broad. The ones who really stand out, they own a niche. They own a very particular topic and for a certain audience. Like, as much as we want to know who we are for, we also want to know who we are not for. For example, I'm not working with spiritual healers, for example, or musicians or crafty people, because I'm not wired like that. It takes a lot of energy out of me, and often there's not the expertise behind it. It's more the craft. So it's something that I don't work with, or like musicians. There's nothing that I can systemize, and I'm all about systemizing, packaging, and then monetizing knowledge. And it's not a bad thing to repel somebody, because that's also what a personal brand is. It attracts the best and repels the rest because we don't want to have refunds or people who complain about us or give us bad reviews. And there will be some people because they don't resonate with our values, because we've just tried to please everyone. And this is where we shoot ourselves in our own foot, because we cannot do that. So I want you to think about, which niche can I own? Is it scale ups in a certain industry, or at a certain level of revenue, or a certain target audience? What can I own because of my personality, because of my background, because of my interests? And then develop a message around that. That's just a little example. I'm pretty sure I also put it in the handbook, that you start thinking about it. Like when we talk about graphic design, it's broad. Like, what does it even mean? Whereas if I dig deep and say I'm really interested in real estate because of my personal commitment to it, I'm watching open houses every weekend because I'm just fascinated by it, even though I may not have the real estate license, but I can connect those two worlds and can become the translator. And this is also what my entire book is all about. Being a trusted authority doesn't mean you have the title necessarily. It means that you have a lot of knowledge in one area as well as in another area, and you can connect the dots. You can translate what you know and make it relevant to your decision maker. So rather than just throwing jargon at you and you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm speaking your language. And this is the marketing aspect of it. But for that, I have to have done the deep dive to identify what is actually that makes me unique. What's my brand story? How did I get to where I am now? And this is, I would say, the most practical way how to find your own positioning. What are the two matrices that you can connect that's relevant to you and relevant to your audience? So it might be that I want to position myself as the strategist for government agencies. And then I can see who else is in that space. How can I differentiate myself from my competitors? Or I want to say, I want to be the outsourced accountant and we want to do all the doing. I don't necessarily want to develop a financial strategy. I want to really work with creatives and do all their tax returns. Then I would be in this quadrant. So simply connecting two worlds that are relevant to you. Am I working with beginners who have never been in marketing, or with big marketing teams who just need an extra hand or an external perspective on things? Because this is how we can position ourselves very distinctively with the value that we can create. So it also means that we do say no to opportunities that may seem great on paper, but it actually doesn't quite align with us. Because often those projects, when you say, oh, I'll just get it on, it pays the bills, they take up more resources and time and energy from us that we cannot spend somewhere else who would actually be a lot more profitable for us and more fulfilling. So think about your own positioning. What could you own? Like, is it high touch and it's really high premium pricing, or is it low touch? Do we want to be the Chanel, or do we want to be the Kmart in our industry? There is no right or wrong. Like, both business models perform well. One is about quality and a handful of people, high price though, and the other one is all about quantity. And I have a lot of clients who want to do the quantity game because they want to get as many people in for, $79 in their program as possible, because that's the business model. That's fine as long as it's backed with systems. So just think about it. Where do you want to position yourselves in your industry? What would be relevant to you? Those kind of matrices.
Just a quick question on that point.
Please.
I know that there's even probably businesses here that that may have a $79 product, but they're not necessarily targeting the $79 client. But it helps to do some of that industry and community engagement piece. And so in that instance, what do you think might be the best approach to do the broad scale product that reaches a wider audience in helping to do that marketing piece and filter through the clients as they kind of make their way through those product sets?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question, because the ascending model, meaning we start from free to fee, there is a good reason for it, that you build some trust because you give something of value. It might be free in terms of a podcast interview or episode, in terms of a free training or webinar or event, to people get to know you, and then you may want to see how much more committed they are, and then you offer this $79 product. But we want to know, what is this free or paid product for? Does it lead to somewhere else? Is it the entry level to upsell from there, or is it the end goal? I do believe, especially service-based businesses, in the product pyramid, like the do it yourself, do it with you, and the done for you approach. The done for you is obviously the most premium service, because we only have so many hours in the day that we can spend on anything. And not everyone is ready to do one-on-one work, for example, or to get our website developed. But it could be that it would be a 20-30% income stream for us. That do it yourself, it's the opposite. It's literally, I give you the resources, the templates, the step-by-step guides, how you can do it yourself without my time involved. So, this is already how you can actually monetize your expertise in 3 different ways. That you do have the ascending model and start with a low-priced offer. It still gives you the knowledge, but it doesn't give you your personal time, your input, your feedback, your external validation of something. Then a do it with you would be a one-to-many approach, to run a paid workshop. So it's usually for businesses who have got more time than money. And it could also be in a business model that you want to offer a solution that grows with your audience. So when you say we work with startups, usually at the beginning, they don't have much money, but when they start generating money, they can invest more. So we can upsell from there. But for that, we need to know the customer journey. what is the next 2, 3, 4, 5 steps from where they enter? What would be the next logical step they would need to take? So having a website is great, but it's only one piece to the puzzle. Then we need to optimize it for SEO. Then we need to drive traffic through paid and organic media. It's one step after the next. How can we increase the customer lifetime cycle with adding more value and services after they've come in and have gotten the base model of it? So knowing a front end offer, what I'm marketing, and then having a back end offer that I'm upselling and upgrading to, that's probably one of the best ways to approach a business.
Yeah, and I think ignoring the startups is to your own detriment, really, because there's so much, from the one day to the next. Some of these no-name startups get $10 million worth of funding, or practically overnight. And one such organization that calls themselves a startup, one of their representatives was on the last call, and they had just raised $450 million, and they still call themselves a startup. So yeah, you got to be I know there's a perception with startup, but with technology, things can scale very quickly.
Absolutely. One of my clients, he's actually advising startups, and that level starts with they have at least 10 million revenue, but it's still a startup in their category because it's a SaaS business. And then another client of mine who we actually built the team for, they just got 75 million in their third round. So it's still considered a startup, but you're right. It's not the one-man band show who thinks we're conquering the world. There is a concept already there. There's a market product concept proof there.
And I'd love to hear some comments from some of the other people inside the room, because it feels like it's a little bit one-sided. But yeah, from Steve, Jen, Jane, Doug, David, Laura, just any kind of feedback or comments to what we've been talking about would be awesome.
I think
still
it's
awake?
valuable. It's really what sets us apart from everyone else. Right? So having a good brand and seeing that you're a thought leader or a trusted advisor in this space is really crucial, because we've all got our specialties and all our little eccentricities that we've sort of focused on over the years. I think it's a good way to sort of differentiate yourself.
That's really good.
I also like the fact, Petra, that it's linked to and it's grounded in self-awareness too. So it's consistent with that pathway of evolution as a person as well. Absolutely. And unfortunately, traditional education doesn't teach us that. Like, they teach us that what we need to do to become an architect or an accountant, the tasks, but it don't teach us how to think if that changes. Like, the accounting industry has changed a lot already thanks to technology. When I know that, and I know I'm really good with people and build rapport quickly, I focus on becoming more the account manager and outsource the day-to-day compliance task to somebody who is, who loves doing that. There are people around it. Like, it's quite a bit of process to get this self-awareness, but I use the brand archetype test, and my archetype is a magician. So I could always outperform and still outperform in those tasks when I have to think what other people can't see yet: product development, building brands, building companies and businesses and commercial ideas beyond what people can see. Now, but I'm really bad with the day-to-day tasks, the execution of it, because it bores me so much. So I'm procrastinating and it takes me forever. So simply this, but again, coming back to the quote, when you put a fish on a tree and expect it to climb, it thinks it's dumb. It is because we lack the self-awareness. Just because we've outperformed here doesn't mean we outperform there. It might be because our values are not aligned. It might be because we're so much out of our natural strength that it just takes all the energy to get to do it. And nowadays we can build a team, a fairly cheap team or a cost-efficient team with global resources. Like, I started with my VA for 5 hours a month. Like it costs me maybe $50 or something. So we don't need to have a full-time employee straight away, but slowly handing off those tasks that literally just drain all the time and energy of us, where we can actually focus on revenue generating tasks, like speaking, like doing marketing, like doing sales calls. This is what not only we can do, but as a business owner is usually where the biggest focus should be, and not the tiny teeny tasks to change the color on a Canva template that takes us 2 hours. Not a $10,000 task.
Yeah, I have a friend, and I'm sure that you've got some great examples, and I'd love to see some examples. But I have a friend in Canberra who was interviewed through the Canberra Times, and it was because they had heard that he was involved in IT, and they interviewed him, and then they put his contact details in there, and then a whole bunch of people started calling him up for computer sales, even though that's not what he does. And at first he found it so annoying that he got all these inquiries for computer sales because it was bothering him and his time. And then he turned it into a really successful business based on one article not relating to his work. And really interesting, right? Because one article can kind of set you off potentially for life. But potentially we don't kind of think about things like that, or media opportunities, or we kind of discard them. But there's probably some things out there that can create exponential results that we're not really looking at.
Absolutely. And also, because I'm also mindful of time, we move on, because that's part of the communication part. How can we increase our reach? So firstly, to finish off the clarification, is being really intentional, because I actually don't like the word authentic. Like when I'm hungry and I'm tired, I'm hangry. This would be authentic. And sometimes because of the time differences, I do a workshop at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Like if I would be authentic, my hair would be all over the place and I would be, usually sweaty because I'm coming from the gym. That is not authentic. That would be authentic, but it wouldn't be beneficial. Intentional is, how do I want to show up? What's the experience that me as a person can bring to the table? For me, it's always high energy. Like if I just sit there and say, well, we could do this and we could do that, I could do it, but I don't. So what are the 3 values when we think about the experience that I always want to be associated with? Like high energy, but also high value. It's not a fluffy, or feel into your body and then you find it out. That's also not me. I want to give tangible results. So think about, what is it that I can bring to every situation, to every interaction, to every experience, touch point that is me. So this is the first part, how I see myself. But then, as much as it's important how we see ourselves, how do others see me? And this is also where the marketing often falls flat. We are the Kmart, but then we are marketing to a Chanel audience. It doesn't work. Or with Chanel prices, but we are the Kmart presence. So this is where people don't trust us, because there's this not a congruence. I'm not sure what's the opposite of congruence, but this is where it lacks. So identifying, what do people see me? What would they, if they only had this one touch point, they see me on my LinkedIn profile or from a Google research, what would they remember about that? Would they know exactly what I'm doing, or am I one of many? So that's one of the questions you can ask yourself. And then we're going intentional to see, there are some gaps. I need to upgrade my visual branding, for example, because it's Kmart, but we want to be Chanel, or we want to change our target audience, or we, whatever it might be. And now we're going into the communication part, because I also want to have some time for Q&As. This is where we actually start bringing things to life. So this is when our promise, what we actually want to be known for, our value message, becomes visual and verbal. So visual and verbal identity. And again, this is one of the reasons why a lot of really smart professionals and really highly qualified business owners don't get the traction, because they don't get the visibility and the reach that they need. And or that happens when they explain what they're doing, I was like, bored, I don't know what it means, switched off. Because we are so deep in the trenches that we think everyone knows what we are talking about. And we just throw all the acronyms at you, and you think I have no idea what you're talking about, and I feel dumb, so I don't like you because you made me feel dumb. This is how quickly we make we base our decision about somebody. So what it comes down to is, yes, we do need to have credibility because we still need the evidence that we can back up our claim, what we stand for. But then the emotional connection comes through stories. How can I back up my claim with personal stories, with case studies, with client stories? And also building a consistent and also very cohesive presence. We get bombarded with all the messages. If we have got different visual presence, or we're constantly using different words, or talking about different topics, we confuse our market, and confused minds don't buy. So what the difference is between, say, an influencer who just stand for a lifestyle, or an authority, a profitable authority brand, is that they know how to package their knowledge into a compelling message that's relevant to their decision maker. And then we bring that to life. Yes, through a logo, through the color palette, through a visual identity and the verbal identity. How do we speak? What's our language? If I would cover your name on a LinkedIn post, would I pick up that it's you? And this is where we developed a brand style guide. But you see, developing the marketing of it comes actually quite late in the journey. It comes after we've done all the deep work. You know, I've got a brand style guide, and the visual and the verbal do's and don'ts are in there. I call them very basic. And hey, honey, hey, babe, hey, sweetie, they're all no-goes because I would never talk like that. So when you think about scaling your marketing, for example, and you get a VA or a social media coordinator, something like that on board, they know exactly what to post and how to use your verbal identity, and also what not to use. I'm even that anal to put in the emojis that we use and don't use. Like, you will never see the poo emoji in any of my posts because that's not me. Clients of mine, they definitely use it because it's their personality. So simply knowing what do we stand for, what do we say, and also what we don't say, creates this consistency and intentionality, how I put myself out there.
Hey, Petra, did you just say that you have a brand style guide for your own personal brand?
Yes, I do. I can put it in the chat, because what I also do is, when I send that brand style guide, there we go. It's in the chat.
What an interesting concept, and I think that would work fantastic for individuals.
It does. So when I send it to also media outlets, for example, because communication is also about how can I get in front of other audiences and be very intentional to curate the narrative that I want to stand for, including the images that they're using, and not just cutting out a grainy image from 1996 where you look very different. If people don't find anything other than what they find immediately, they use whatever they've got. Whereas if you provide the bio, the images, the color palette, everything like that, they very much use that, and everything is consistent. So I put it in the chat. It's my personal style guide, and VAs can use it. So when I'm onboarding somebody, they know exactly what to say, what to use, and what not to use. The colors, the hex codes, for example. All of that is in there.
Petra, you keep using the word, or the term VA. What does that mean?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, virtual assistant.
Okay.
So there are the incredible minds behind the brand who literally do the doing, and make it all look so easy and seamless.
So you have found a solution in that space that you find obviously works really well.
100%. I've got 4 different VAs in different specializations. So one is literally doing research. Also for client projects, it's just to research. The other person is a graphic designer in New York. So I also cover 24/7. So that it's always important for me when I build my team that we've got a 24/7 coverage, and we don't have to wait a business day, for example, or 2 business days. Then one is doing audio and video editing, so my podcast, and he also does all the video editing. And the other one is social media for my company brands and a few of my personal brands.
Mm-hmm. And they actually create posts and post for you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
I do give them, however, the direction in terms of the content. So I usually work a couple of months ahead, and give them already, say, an interview that I had or a podcast interview, podcast episode that I did, and they're repurposing it.
Mhm.
And in Canva, which is a graphic design platform, I've got templates that they can literally repurpose the content. So it could be a quote that we repurpose on one of my branded templates, and it's ready to go.
Yeah, awesome.
And this is the thing that I really want to stress with VAs. They're usually executors, they're not strategic thinkers. So we need to give them exactly, do this in this format and this style. And not
But they have
come
to
up
be
with
able to
something.
think, because if you have to go into the micro detail of it all, then you might as well just do it yourself.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So and this is why I love templates, everything from email responses to social media templates to proposals, because this is how you scale and can also outsource it. If we have to come up with something from scratch all the time, this is where we lose money and time. And also lose consistency in terms of the touch points, the experience that we want to create.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed of late in terms of social media, especially LinkedIn, is the more contextual the messaging is to whatever is going on with that individual. They may have recently posted something and you're kind of responding to that post and saying, hey, I saw this article and this is what I thought. Something that's super contextual, even if they're a cold contact, can turn instantly warm. And maybe you can do that really kind of high level contextual relationship work and leave some of the mundane activities, at 80% of stuff that needs to happen and needs to move forward to the VAs.
100%. And this is also part of the verbal identity. Like, what are the 2 to 5 maximum content topics that I want to talk about? Like, I don't talk about dog grooming and then sunscreen and then social media and personal branding, because that would be confusing. I stick to my guns, and they're only the 3 topics that I rinse and repeat over and over. Because again, this is consistency and makes it very easy for people to associate you with those topics. Okay, we need to move on, people. But when we talk about topics, sharing the 3 steps to the 1 mistake to avoid, the top 10 tools, they're all great topics to talk about, but it's only one piece to the puzzle. And this is where so many focus on. But if I talk about the 3 mistakes that every small business owner makes when it comes to tax time, and an accountant says it, like, I've got 0 knowledge about accounting, but it's very interchangeable. The stories, however, this is what really creates the memory, the association, the emotional connection with somebody. It could be, I shared my story, how I was put on a performance improvement plan because I couldn't sell myself. And now I've made that my business, because it's not, I thought I was just the awkward, shy person from Austria who couldn't speak English properly. But then when I spoke to hundreds of my candidates and realized there was the same pattern, I saw there's market demand for it. So often people don't tell us they need it, but you see from talking to them what they're struggling with and how can you create a solution around it. And these are the stories that are really powerful, because this is when people can see themselves in your personal story or a client story. And when they trust you, it's not just, I know it all because I was born like that. No, I've gone through the tough spots and I know exactly what it feels like. So I'm not pointing the finger, I just share my story. And this is really what sets us apart. So think about your own personal story. There are only 3 parts that we actually need to remember when we talk about storytelling. And again, everyone makes it so complex, and it isn't. We need to create some context and introduce the character. And that's you, by the way. So what was the situation before you thought the way you were thinking? So for me, it was all about just put your head down, don't talk up, do the doing, do good work, people will see it. The conflict happened when that bit me in my backside and I was put on a performance improvement plan. So clearly what I've been doing, what worked in my favor for so long, became my biggest baggage. So I was kind of, I had the one and only choice, find another job quickly, because we don't want you to be here, even though pips are not necessarily based on that all the time, but in my case, it certainly was. So the third C in that, so context and character, conflict or challenge, and then the change. What has happened after that? What have you done with these learnings? So if you can take people on the journey why you got into the business, because you had the worst experience, or you had a sick partner and were firsthand in the hospital, and you really got interested in medicine and medical care, even though you come from software engineering, how can you connect the dots? And this is also what Steve Jobs always says. We cannot connect the dots looking forward, only backwards. And creativity is connecting dots, even with obvious, with things that are not as obviously connected. So if you want to change career trajectory, for example, you're barista and you're making coffee, but you want to get into graphic design, like on paper, it would be like, weird, you're not qualified enough. When I'm telling the story and say, I got into graphic design because when I made the lattes, I was really fascinated in making the coffees beautiful and having this experience. But it only lasted like 5 minutes until the coffee was gone, which is why I thought, how else can I use my creativity? And this is how I got into graphic design. I just make a story up. Obviously, it didn't happen, but you see how easy and quickly it can actually happen. And this is the power of your story, that everyone remembers, oh, you were the one who was making all the beautiful coffees. So now clearly you must be good with creating a proposal for me. Halo effect works in the good and the bad way. Okay, I'll share the slides anyway with you also, and you've got a bit of a handout to look at it. But this is then how we develop our marketing assets. So now we bring everything to life through a photo shoot, and we post photos, through creating infographics, through having a portfolio, through creating content. So this is the tangible assets that we can then put out to the world, that we can then pitch to become a guest on a podcast, for example. That's one of my reach strategies, to pitch to at least 10 podcasts a week. And we usually get 2 to 4 yeses. And you get in front of an audience that is already interested in what you've got to offer, and you don't have to build your audience. Speaking at events, like I spoke last week at the Global Change Management Conference, and there were 1,100 people there. So you bet I got clients from it. So where can you put yourself into that has your audience already, where you can create value, where you can share some of your insights that then helps you to get clients to build the business further. Okay, the last part, money, show me the money, commercialization. So what are we doing here? As I said, I'm a big fan of building a portfolio career, multiple income streams. And there are just a few ideas how we can actually commercialize our expertise. So it might be just to get into a more senior role, for example. It might be that we create a service. This one is actually a better version. So this is how we always start, to identify where is your current income coming from. And I call it the pay model. So products, anything that you create once and you can multiply. So this is the do-it-yourself approach. How can you put something together based on your expertise? Could be a checklist, it could be a template, anything like that, that you can sell over and over again, that's associated with your expertise. Others have made incredible businesses through access. So having a membership, the Chamber of Commerce would be a model like that, running workshops, having conferences. And then your delivery is where you literally have to do the doing. But if you only do that, doing the done for you websites or tax returns and speaking even, if we only do that and we get sick, or a partner or a family member gets sick, or whatever might happen, this is very risky. So I would have at least one of the income streams across all 3 deliverables. We can build online communities fairly easily, simply starting, say, a meetup group, or offering your own membership, whatever it might be, or running workshops. So hopefully you start thinking about, how else can I offer what I've got? If I deliver marketing, and the only way to do marketing right now is through me doing the doing, how could I introduce a $500 workshop, a 3 hours workshop, where I can teach the starter business owners to do their own marketing, and I get 10 people in and around it once a month? It's another $5,000 here. Maybe I can create a digital product, and that might be $990, and you get 1 audit from me on top of that, rather than me doing the 5,000 or 10,000 delivery one-on-one. So think about it. What we need to consider though is with the different types of products, we also need to tap into different audiences. Like this, when we talked about the ascension model, we start with something cheap or free, and then we work our way upwards. So the more it's a community aspect, it is a higher price than, just the do it yourself products, the checklist and so forth, but it can't be as high as when I actually do it for you. Like when you go into a mastermind, the most expensive mastermind is probably $250,000, and that's top end. But for a done for you service, there are products that are way beyond that. So that is a little bit of an essential model. Like a book is one of the income streams now. Having said that, if you don't have 1 million followers, you don't make money with a book. Like even though my book is premium priced with $32, Amazon takes about 57% of it. So 40% of the production costs, and then the what's it called? 40% goes to them, and then plus production costs. So I get about $12 or $13, not even. So you can't get rich with it. It's an entry level. It's usually a good excuse to get to a bigger speaking engagement, for example. So I've actually raised my prices quite significantly since the book is out, because I get a lot more inquiries. So what can lead to the other? Positioning. What kind of assets can you use to justify your positioning and your price rise? The last part, and then I shut up, I promise, is to then go from the expert and the person brand, the authority brand, to the authority, to a trusted authority. And this is where you've got your own intellectual property, where you build your own models, that you don't have to use another system, for example. The 3 Cs or the trusted authority model, for example, I monetize that. I don't have to pay royalties to anyone else. So having this proven system and framework that you can monetize sets you up in a completely different level again, because nobody's talking about that topic and you can own it. But we don't start there. We start with identifying what actually my promise is, how do I deliver it in terms of performance, and what's the experience with it. Okay, this was it in a rapid fire now, the last couple of steps. Do we have any questions? Because I know we are quite on time, and I know everyone's got things to do. Have you got any questions, any comments, any insights that you want to implement afterwards?
I've got a question, Petra. It's Jane here. Sorry, my video is probably not the best one because I'm out. Just with regard to your book experience and the value that's raising for you, more being a profile builder and building your credibility and then allowing your brand to blossom through that medium. I'm just wondering how you went about, or we've got any advice on how to go about the path from, developing thought leadership, IP kind of content, and when you may have put that on a social media post or written a piece on LinkedIn, and then how that might have moved into a book, and how you manage that, I guess, that content release. Did you kind of leave it as a big bang for the book, or did you release part of it and let it grow over time?
Great
and what
question.
have you seen work?
Yes, absolutely. Now, I have to say, I've been creating content in one or another form for the last 8 years. So I don't recommend anyone to write a book if there is not a concept that people are interested in the topic, or that the message lands already. Like I've tweaked and adjusted my messaging and how I'm saying things over the years. And how I do it, and this is actual thought leadership, is to get feedback. So doing keynotes, for example, posting on LinkedIn and see what resonates with people, what gets the biggest engagement, so to validate that the message is valuable. And because I've written quite a lot of blog posts and podcast episodes, I could actually use quite a bit of that for the book. Having said that, throughout the book research, I've identified there's a next level. So initially I just wanted to talk about personal branding because I've had the method for, a long time, 5-6 years, and I've had people going through it and I get the results. But then through my research, I identified that technology has changed how we trust people, and also, flatter hierarchies, for example. So I've identified that trust is a big part in building a personal brand, and it's now reputational capital, that you also need to build your online profile. So it has evolved, and I started writing the book 1st of July and I published it 1st of December. And it was only end of October that I changed direction and went from just personal branding to then trust and authority, and connected the two concepts. I nearly didn't put it out there because all of a sudden I didn't make sense to myself. But it forces you to find a different way. So what I'm saying is there needs to be some kind of validation of a concept already. You don't need to know everything already before you start, but it also takes a fair bit commitment to market it. How I use the book is to send personalized copies to certain people or companies. LinkedIn, for example, got a book because I want to become a LinkedIn instructor, and I did a few LinkedIn lives with LinkedIn, but I'm not quite there yet. So I'm still bribing them with the book. Bigger speaking engagements, I can pitch to them now. Bigger companies, I send them a personalized copy and put a sticky note in there and say, this part is for you. And you can actually, make it bigger, send it usually to like 10 people who are in a similar situation, and I point out a certain part of the book. So this is how I use it as my marketing tool. It's not a money generator that I could live off it. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, I had a question. I think maybe the majority of people here in the room are developing, good contacts with the C-suite market and senior executive market. Mm-hmm. Is there an example of a LinkedIn profile that you can show us that you appreciate in its, let's say, approach, in its execution, especially for that senior executive market?
Absolutely. I'm actually getting him on my podcast very soon. Yep. He became the LinkedIn Voice 2021, literally now, David McLean. And his engagement is literally through the roof. And the funny thing is, he's actually not creating original content, but he's curating the best pieces of content. Let me put it in the chat. And he's built his massive profile on that. Like when you have a look at his posts, 1,300 likes, 2,500 likes. So he's an executive in an organization and has now also started his own business because he had so much success on LinkedIn and he got a lot of inquiries through it. So he would be one of those. No worries. Thanks so much, Steve, for coming. So that would be, there are many ways how to build actually your profile. That is one of those. Who else?
That's great.
Yeah, it looks really good.
And he literally curates content from other people, but he builds his thought leadership because I talked to him about it and he said, I'm the DJ in the content world. Like, I'm not creating anything myself, but I take the best pieces and distill the essence of it for my audience. And this is how he built his thought leadership around it. And this is also how I would recommend everyone to start, simply using somebody else's ideas and putting your spin on it. How do you interpret it? And it doesn't need to be an original idea. An original idea comes by digesting, by seeing what's out there, what resonates with you, what doesn't. It's a process.
Yeah, I can see this is super valuable. Are you able to put in your blog, the next blog link? Or is that available?
What do you mean?
That interview that you're going to do with David.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, we've been talking about that for 6 months. Wow. But having said that, Phil DiBella, it's literally this week's podcast. And he was so candid about how he built his profile. And, he is Trust Authority podcast. He's a phenomenon for me because he has not only built a personal brand, but he sold the personal brand name, like DiBella Coffee, for, what was it, 78 million? Like a lot of money. And
I haven't seen anyone else been able to do that, to build a personal brand and sell a personal brand with a personal name, but he's done it. And in the interview, he actually talks very candid how he did it. Like he built Feel the Bella as the personal brand and the Bella Coffee as the business brand for years before he actually wanted to sell it. So again, being intentional, what is my end goal? What do I actually want to achieve? And now he's onto the coffee commune, and that's already $1 million business. And it's only been in the business for 18 months.
Yeah.
Great case study. And he builds his profile also quite vocal. He talks about politics and so forth, because these are the topics that are important for him. You will never see me talking about politics or vaccination or religion, because I don't want to be known for that. I don't want to get into that kind of conversation. It doesn't do any good for me. So think about what are the topics that you would fight for and defend, and which topics do you just stay away from because it doesn't do you any good. You would dig a deeper hole than you actually would benefit yourself.
Petra, do you have any recommendations on how you get onto podcasts and speaking events and so forth to raise your profile?
Absolutely. That's every Wednesday morning, my to-do for half an hour. So I get my VAs to research podcasts, or when I'm listening to podcasts, I take notes, which podcasts I want to get onto. And I've got a pitch deck. So even though I personalize it a little bit, I have something that, it's a rinse and repeat template with my social handles, with the 3 topics that I would recommend to talk about, and having something that's relevant to them, saying, I listened to this podcast about this topic, and I would have this different angle to the same topic. So yeah, it's research which podcast you want to be on, and then make it a regular habit to actually pitch to that. Same is with conferences. Once a quarter, I look for all the conference coming up in the next 6 months and list down which ones I want to pitch to, and goes the same way. So I also have a Google Doc link where I literally send people. I just shared it with you, because
you get your researchers to do that sort of sweep to see which ones are relevant and then try and target those.
Yes, 100%. I got a list actually this morning from my VAs with, I don't know, I think it's like over 80 podcasts. And
Yes,
I'm now marking which ones I actually want to pitch to, because some I don't want to.
Yeah.
And then I would also say, look for any podcasts or shows where XYZ was on it, because they are in a similar industry. I know already they are interested in the topic, but I would come from a different angle.
Would you share your researchers, or are they overloaded at the moment?
What do you mean? My Google Doc.
In terms of, if those folks that do that sort of sweep.
Your VAs.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can shoot us the contact details and we can talk to them. Because you've already vetted their quality for us, so.
Exactly.
You're poaching my staff people. Well, I can make the introduction because they are expanding also, so I'm always happy to make referrals.
It's good to see entrepreneurs in the room.
It takes a while for my brain to grind over and get the gear, so I thought I'd save the best to last.
Hey,
yeah,
I'm going to go too.
Thanks. No worries. Thanks so much. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Petra. Thank you.
Dankeschön. Brad is speaking German. Excellent. Well, I know we are a little bit over time already. I'm excited to see everyone at the conference, hopefully.
Yes.
And
yeah, that's right.
David, you've got obviously my contact details. If everyone's got additional questions that I can answer, anything, just shoot me a note, or LinkedIn. I'm obviously on LinkedIn.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I'll be sending updates to everyone here as well. I've got a document there to kind of guide us all in as hosts. But yeah, really looking forward to it. And thank you so much for this. This is, I found it really valuable, really, really valuable. And there's a lot of stuff that I thought I knew, but I didn't know. And yeah, so I've got some really good notes here and really appreciate your time. This has been really good.
Oh, I'm glad. That's the one goal, that somebody has at least one takeout. That's all I needed.
Thanks, Petra. I better run too. I'll see you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much.